All right, welcome to episode 3 of Aggie Chats. This is a podcast run by student athletes for student athletes. My name is Ashley Salem.
And my name is Kayla Wolf. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and make sure to watch our most recent episodes up on the UC Davis Athletic YouTube channel.
And today we are joined by Rachael Mack. She is our nutritionist here at UC Davis. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us about your journey as a nutritionist and how you got here, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, happy to. I actually did my undergrad here at UC Davis. I grew up in Davis, and so I was a student athlete. I was on the lacrosse team, and I had known coming into college that I wanted to be a dietitian. And so I, in high school, had interned at the WHNRC, which is the Western Health and Nutrition Research Center. It's actually like walking distance from the stadium. And they do a lot of kind of federally funded research about nutrition and food. And so through my internship there in high school, I had met with their dietitians, and I was like, oh, this is great. I get to talk about food. I get to interact with people all day. And so I went into my undergrad career here as a nutrition major, and I knew I wanted to be a dietitian. My junior year, I tore my meniscus, and I had an extra year of eligibility and was kind of going back and forth of how would I use that. And through that, I added a second major. Exercise biology was a full major at that point, and so I double majored in clinical nutrition and exercise biology in my undergrad. And those two perfectly intersect because as a student athlete, nutrition is hugely important, and understanding the physiology of what you're asking your body to do every day is also really important. And so that kind of led me down this path of, oh wow, I get to talk about food and nutrition, and I also get to have a hand in the exercise science of what's physically happening to a student's body, a student athlete's body every day. And so that led me down I think I want to be a sport dietitian. That's what I want to do. And so I, in my undergrad, had various opportunities. I interned at Apple through their corporate wellness with their dietitians, and I thought for a while maybe I wanted to go that route. But when I graduated, I was really fortunate, and I had an internship post-graduation with USA Volleyball, working with the Olympic dietitians that support USA Volleyball. And so that kind of got me into the Olympic world and into the world of sport dietetics, and the rest has kind of taken off from there.
That is so neat that you were able to experience the student athlete experience and kind of see how you can apply nutrition to sports through yourself. That's really neat, and especially with professionals in sports as well. Can you talk about some of the biggest challenges that you find with the athletes, the biggest challenges that they have with nutrition?
Absolutely. I would say everybody has their own challenges. Across the board, timing is a challenge, especially as a student athlete. Your time is not your own. You have class schedules, you have practice schedules, and some people have jobs, right? It's the intersection of all of those. And so it's finding time to eat every day. And so I'd say that is often the biggest kind of hurdle, is one, figuring out what people's schedules are, and then how do we make sure that food is still a priority in that. I think another piece as well, especially in the collegiate world, is the financial piece of food, right? Food is really expensive, and it only continues to increase. I think food costs are up about 20%. And so understanding that my role is to educate and provide resources about how you fuel your body as a student athlete so that we can take best advantage of all the work and practice that you're doing, but also understand that food costs money. And so working with student athletes to understand the resources here on campus. The food pantry is one of them. That's a great resource in the MU. Every student is eligible to go in there and utilize kind of the free options that they have. As well as CalFresh, and this is newer. So every student athlete qualifies for CalFresh through enrollment in Aggie Evo. There are some kind of qualifying pieces to it, having a meal plan, making sure that you make under a certain amount of money. But if you do qualify, it's about $300 a month in a free benefit that goes towards food. And so that's a really great resource. Again, food is expensive. And so how do we kind of take advantage of the opportunities, one, from the education and what I can provide, and then two, what the campus can provide so that people are able to kind of best take advantage of the work that you're doing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like time is definitely a big challenge too. As a student athlete, you're trying to balance class and athletics and everything. What are some tips that you have for student athletes to find time to eat and make sure that that nutrition is what you need as a student athlete?
I think first and foremost, working with a student athlete, to understand what are your goals, like what are you working towards, right? Everybody is really busy, and so how do we find the time and prioritize that time? And for me, that really starts with working through what are you actually working towards? Do you understand that food allows you to be your best student self, your best athlete self? It helps you sleep, it helps your immune system. So how do we take all of those pieces that help us be a better student athlete, a better human, and understand that food is a priority there? And so starting with that, and that education piece, that food really allows you to be your best self, because it is often the thing that drops off first, right? As we get busy, well, I have class, and then I have to run to practice, and then I have office hours, and maybe it's been 6, 7, 8 hours since you've had a meal. Well, if we actually took a break or we packed a lunch during that time, it would help your brain function better in that class. It would help your muscles function better at that practice. It would allow you to ask maybe better questions to your professor to help you study better later on. And so for me, first and foremost, understanding what your goals are as a student athlete, and then how do we work towards those goals using food to help kind of fuel that engine and that your brain.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any specific snacks that you recommend for on the go to pack in your bag if you know that you're going to be gone for a long day?
I do. I call them backpack snacks, right? And so first and foremost, like, do you have a lunchbox? Like, easy way to keep things cold. There's some great ones. They don't have to be ugly to be functional. And so I think things that are shelf stable, like a PB&J, could be an awesome option. Also pretty inexpensive. And so we did some bread, some peanut butter jelly, easy. I really like things that are dried, and so some like dried beans, whether that's a dried edamame, really nice protein option. We could do dried chickpeas, again, an easy way to get in something that's never going to go bad in your backpack, and we can get some protein and some fiber in to help kind of meet your protein goals as well as help keep you full. Dried fruit can be a really great option as well, especially if you are often running from class to practice, and so that's an easy carbohydrate option that you can use. And so we could combine, right, a PB&J, some dried fruit, some dried edamame. We have a full meal. You can keep it in there kind of multiple days in a row, and it's not going to get weird in your backpack. And so those are things that I like to recommend. I think jerky can be a nice option. We could go the fresh fruit route. We could have applesauce. I know that's hugely popular within our student athlete group. And so again, to me, it has everything to do with, what do you actually like to eat? If you don't like to eat something, it's not a good option for you. And so how do we work together to figure out what do you like to eat? What would you actually eat? What's going to make you feel really good at practice? That's going to be your kind of best snack.
I don't know if this is like an interesting conversation, but you're the nutritionist here, and you kind of work with a lot of students one-on-one, right? What's like one of the biggest things you see about athletes insecurity wise? Because I know that everyone's like constantly worried about like their physique, keeping and maintaining that, and there's a lot going on in an athlete's head. And can you talk maybe a little more about those kind of insecurities, the things that you see, the things that you kind of help with for athletes?
Sure, happy to. I think there's a huge mental side, especially as we think through some of the things you mentioned, right? What do I look like? What am I concerned about? Am I being judged based on some of these things? I think my role in that conversation is to provide you the resources you need to make choices that align with your goals. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our goals are realistic, sometimes they aren't, and so that's another piece of my how I view my role, is how do we set realistic kind of nutrition goals, maybe realistic body composition goals, mm-hmm. And understanding that physiology piece of, would this actually be beneficial for your performance if we were to change it? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. So how do I kind of work with you on your
Yeah.
goals? A huge piece of my role in that is giving you, or whoever that student athlete is, a real comfort in understanding that you have unlimited permission to eat. You have unconditional permission to eat anything you want. Food has no power other than it provides you energy every day. And so that is a huge kind of tenet of intuitive eating, which I am a huge fan of. And so how do I weave some mindful eating, intuitive eating kind of principles into, yes, we are talking about performance, yes, we are talking about athlete nutrition, but you are a human and you are really working every day on your goals and working to be successful. And so I view my role in that conversation as giving you permission, giving you the reliance on yourself that you know what your body needs, and that you can eat what you want. I truly believe that we can all foods fit. We just have to figure out the right timing. And so if there's something that you really like, that you really enjoy, we can make that a part of your fueling plan. We can make that something that you get to and you have access to eating all the time, but understanding when it might be kind of most appropriate.
For sure. It just feels like the athletes are constantly under a spotlight and pressure to act and perform a certain way and even look a certain way. I mean, you look at some of the greatest athletes and they're completely jacked, and not all body types are like that either. So it's really good to have somebody like you in an athlete's corner to kind of be there to reassure and help with that journey as well. Because I know it can be difficult for any student athlete, no matter what, and anybody in general too.
Yeah, I would say it is difficult. This is a transition piece of your life, and so maybe your body is changing. Maybe you're lifting for the first time. Maybe you're making your own food choices for your first time. And so how I really view my role here within the athletic department as a resource, and how can I help a student athlete understand kind of what their needs are, maybe work through some of those other kind of thoughts and feelings about food that maybe don't have anything to do with food, but have to do with ourselves. And also using our other resources here. We have a sports psychologist. How do I work together with that sports psychologist to make sure that an athlete is kind of best supported?
I really like your perspective on goal setting and kind of taking the positive outlook on everything and allowing what I imagine the student athlete to set their own goals rather than having a specific set plan that goes across for everyone, because it's not like that. Like Ashley said, everyone has a different body type and everyone has different goals and has to perform in a different way for different positions, different sports and whatnot. Can you talk about how you personalize a plan for each athlete, and do you have any advice for people who are setting their own individual dietary plan?
I do. I think first and foremost, it starts with getting to know somebody, right? Food is hugely personal. What we eat, the styles of food we like to eat, the food we have access to, right? That's really personal. And so my first step is getting to know somebody. What do you like to eat? What foods have you tried? What foods don't you like? Because like I said previously, the food that's kind of best for you is the one that makes you feel the best. The things that I like to eat might not be something you like to eat. And so working to kind of understand that first and foremost, and help that kind of guide the rest of that conversation. And so there are, I would say, kind of fundamental principles of sport nutrition around the amount of carbohydrates we need that's established in the literature, the amount of protein that we need based on the type of sport that an athlete participates in, the amount of fat that somebody needs, that we need kind of fruits and vegetables, I call them color, every day. And then but there's so many options within that, right? There's so many different types of carbohydrate. If you don't like bagels, that's okay. Do you like an English muffin? Could we have some toast? Could we have a tortilla, right? There's no kind of good or bad option. There's the option that you like best. And so I sit down with an athlete and I try to establish that first and foremost. One, that you can eat whatever you like to eat and whatever style you like to eat. And then two, how do we use that style to help elevate our performance? And so a huge one that I see a lot is breakfast, right? Breakfast is somewhat controversial and not everybody likes to eat it. And so I like to start there. Breakfast does, especially with a morning practice, that's our pre-practice fuel. And so how do we work together, right? I view this as teamwork to help you understand the reason that breakfast might be important, and then how can I support you in making choices that make you feel really good. How do we make sure that you have choices you like to eat, that you can afford to eat, and that make you feel really great, whether you're in the pool, you're on a horse, we're on the track, so that we are able to really take best advantage of that training that we're doing every day.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you would advise to go against when student athletes are shopping and looking at like a nutrition label? Are there big no-nos for people to watch out for?
I personally don't think so. I think I really do stand behind that message of we can make almost everything work. And so sometimes when we're looking at maybe a pre-practice meal, we're choosing items that maybe have a little bit less fat because they're a little bit slower to digest. Maybe we're choosing a more simple sugar, something that's easier to digest pre-practice. And maybe we don't need those types of things later in the day. However, if you like those things, and I'm thinking about fruit snacks, I'm thinking about juice, I'm thinking about maybe some of our kind of higher sugar options, those are a great pre-practice or during practice option. Again, they're quick to digest. Maybe we stick towards something that's a whole grain that maybe has more fiber, a little bit more protein later in the day, because that is going to help kind of nourish your body as a whole. And so I think going back to, again, what do you like to eat? Great, we can make that work within your fueling plan. If you're at the grocery store, I would eat a variety of foods. That's what's really going to help you feel your best. I would choose a variety of carbohydrates, a variety of proteins, a variety of fruits and vegetables, and also understanding that no one food item is going to be better or worse for you than another. I think to your question initially around maybe some of the power or thoughts we have about food, coming at it from that angle helps kind of reduce some of that anxiety of, oh, maybe I'm choosing a better option, or I need this one because it's going to be better for me. Well, it could be better for you, but it also could be totally fine. And so I think I view my role as creating some comfort around food as well.
Yeah.
Pivoting kind of off of that, what are your thoughts on energy drinks? There's a lot of conversation about NCAA and what is allowed, what is banned. I know Celsius is banned, Panera has the charged lemonades. Those have some lawsuits going on right now. Just what are your thoughts surrounding that and other sources of energy that you can think of?
Happy to chat. I would say my first request would be that we could change energy drinks name, because energy drinks provide you caffeine, not inherently energy, right? Energy comes from calories, which come from food. And so that's my own personal gripe with energy drinks. I would say across the board, what energy drinks are giving you is that caffeine source, right? Caffeine binds to adenosine receptors, which adenosine makes you feel fatigued. And so what it does is it's a stimulant. It binds to that receptor. You aren't able to feel as fatigued, and then it feels like you have energy, even though you might be really hungry. It also is an appetite suppressant. And so I would say just being aware of what caffeine's actually giving you. It's not giving you energy, it's just giving you a false sense of energy, and it might be kind of suppressing your appetite. And so how do we focus on food for energy? I think that's my first ask is, how are we utilizing these drinks? Are we using them because maybe we didn't sleep enough? Are we using them because maybe we didn't eat enough and we feel like we need that energy? But can we also have some breakfast if we're using caffeine to help us feel alert and awake in the morning? And so I think first and foremost, understanding what they're actually doing. And then second, understanding that as a student athlete, there are kind of limits from the NCAA around caffeine amounts. The NCAA does not ban any particular ingredient, and so, or any particular brand. So Celsius itself is actually not banned by the NCAA.
Oh, really?
They use a type of caffeine that is listed as on the NCAA list as a source of caffeine, and there's an upper limit to the amount of caffeine you can have, both kind of in competition. However, there's no particular brand that's banned. And so I think, again, understanding that education piece, what actually is limited by the NCAA, what ingredients look like, and what can put you at risk. I think also across the board, energy drinks sometimes can have added ingredients. Caffeine is the actual kind of ergogenic aid that can help with performance. The rest of it, we probably don't need. And so to your question around what types of kind of energy, if you will, are we looking for? I would say first and foremost, we're looking for caffeine. That's the actual ingredient that might help your performance. And so what are other ways we can get that? Is it through coffee? Is it through maybe a cold brew? Could we have some green tea? Could we have a matcha? There's many other sources of caffeine that maybe don't have to come from an energy drink. And so again, making those choices, understanding actually, right, what's the goal here? I think always I like to come back to the goal. Are we using these because we're tired? Like, well, why are we not sleeping enough? What's right? Like, that's a huge piece of being a student athlete, is have we allocated enough time for all the things we need to do? And so looking at sleep, looking at, I get really tired at practice. And well, maybe we didn't eat breakfast, and that could help us have more energy than just relying on that caffeine source. So again, I think great question. It's a little nuanced, but understanding kind of first and foremost what caffeine actually does, how it can be used to kind of elevate your performance, and then also maybe some of the ways people use it that might be detrimental to their performance.
Got it. You mentioned earlier you were working with the USA team volleyball, right?
We did, yes.
Yeah. Could you talk about, like, I don't know, some of the differences you've seen between the college and professional athletes, and I guess if they are that different or not?
Yeah, happy to. I worked for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee for the Olympic cycle between Tokyo and Rio. And so I worked within team sports, and I supported a variety of different athletes, some of which were actually in college while they were competing and training with the Olympic team. And so some of them, their lives are very similar. They're in college, they're in classes, they're juggling all of those. And some of them are post-college, and their career is their job. And so I think functionality-wise, there are some differences. They are making money, although that's changing, right, in college, right, through NIL. And at times there can be some different goals and maybe different pressures. In nutrition, a lot of the foundational principles are the same. We need carbohydrate, we need protein, we need fats, we need fruits and vegetables. Potentially the amount that we need might change because they might be training more. Some trainings that I would go to would be maybe 2 different training sessions every day for 2 to 3 hours. And so how are we going to work through training 6 hours a day? How do we make sure we're eating enough food? Another huge piece of it is they don't have class, right? Their job is their sport. And so understanding that piece of it as well. Maybe they do have more time to focus on nutrition. Maybe they do have more money to buy different food options. I think first and foremost, though, my approach is the same. What are our goals? What are we working towards? And then how do we utilize that nutrition piece and that nutrition education to help you reach your goals?
I really admire your consistent outlook on just goal setting and the personalization in it. I feel like that's super important, and especially like allowing the athlete to feel like they have control over what they eat as well. And you've provided us a lot of education on not energy drinks, caffeine sources. Is there one piece of advice, though, if you'd like to leave one piece of advice for our listeners, what would it be?
Happy to. My goal always is to create comfort around food. And so I think when we're thinking through advice, it's understanding that food can be utilized as a tool. It provides us energy, it can help our performance, it can connect us, it can build relationships. And so I think first and foremost that comfort around food is attainable, and that we can use it to help benefit our life. It does not have to be something that we stress out about or that we worry about. And I think that's the advice I'd like to leave with, is just that comfort and understanding with food can only help benefit your life. And so how we work through that can be individualized, but that food really is a powerful unifier, right? There's so many reasons why we eat, like I mentioned. Maybe we're going out to eat with friends, maybe we're eating with a family, maybe we're celebrating something. Those are all things that kind of nourish your soul. And so understanding that it can be used for performance, it can be used as something that we enjoy and that is still beneficial.
Yeah, I really like that. That's super helpful to everyone.
Yeah.
Can you just give our listeners tell us how we can contact you and reach you?
Sure thing. You can email me. My email is on the website. It is rm and then Mack, M-A-C-K, at ucdavis.edu. And I also have an Instagram. It's at Fueling Aggies. And so you can check there for kind of updates, information, or send me an email if you have a question or you would like to meet with me individually. I'm happy always to find time to meet with student athletes, because I really do believe that nutrition education can both help you while you're here as a student athlete and also for the rest of your life, right? We have to eat every day for the rest of our lives. How do we create environments for ourselves where there's comfort around food? First thing we can do is educate ourselves. Do we actually understand what our needs are, how food can be used for those needs, and how do we, again, create that comfort within food?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming, joining us, and spreading some wisdom, dropping some knowledge. That was episode 3. Thank you for tuning in.